Family life can be a little messy, to say the least. Some families are intact, others are painfully separated. Some are blended and others are even reblended. So it makes it difficult to speak in general terms about family life when it often doesn't simply consist of an original couple and either their natural born or adopted children anymore. And not only can family life be a bit confusing in terms of its configuration, sadly, we know it can also be the locus of private little wars, unless, of course, you're a celebrity, and then your squabbles can end up being the topic of tabloid headlines. Reddit, which is a social media platform where people often explain their situations for the comment and advice of others, had some interesting posts around Christmas. One was from a woman who asked the opinion of others concerning a hurtful situation. And no matter what she made and brought or how hard she tried to please her in-laws, her husband's family never ate even one morsel of anything she contributed to the extended family's Christmas potluck. Instead, whatever she brought was packed up and sent home with her. She was ready to give up and bring nothing. Who could blame her? Another post was from a young woman, not yet 20, who, already living away from home, kept her pregnancy a secret even from her own parents, and then showed up at a family holiday gathering with a baby. Surprise! It didn't go well. Her parents were angry, the tension between them ruined the gathering, and she's left wondering why. Another woman wrote in about being very insulted that her in-laws told her to please get a babysitter for her children, one aged 10 and the other 8, and said they didn't want their Christmas Eve dinner to be spoiled by disruptive kids. She was torn between keeping the peace by doing so or staying home with her own children. You know, we could go on and on, but in general, sadly, the advice given to these people on Reddit wasn't to bury the hatchet or try to keep and make peace, but to hit back in subtle or not so subtle ways. And so, in a sense, they were advised to have themselves a passive-aggressive little Christmas. It is concerning, to say the least, how unkind, how sometimes petty and deliberately hurtful people can be in the context of families, especially at holidays when, sadly, lots of little grievances, perhaps suffered from previous years, seem to come to the surface. So in contrast today, we are asked to focus on a unique family with all its blessings, even amid its challenges too, as we have heard in the gospel reading. Yes, we are asked to honor the Holy Family of Nazareth, principally Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, yes, but also James, little Joseph, Simon, and Jude, plus 2 unnamed sisters. Indeed, if we follow the Gospels of Mark and Matthew, and not just piety or legend, we can glean that the Holy Family of Nazareth was in fact a blended family consisting of the widower Joseph's children from a first marriage, and now the addition of Mary as Joseph's new wife, and thus stepmother to his children, and the addition of Jesus, her firstborn son, as their new stepbrother. Surely in first century Nazareth, where life was without any luxuries whatsoever, daily life was always hard work. And inevitably, there were tensions between the siblings at times, as the sisters were very likely expected to assist with the cooking and cleaning and even wait on their brothers. And maybe Mary was perceived, and probably wrongly, as showing favor to Jesus because he was her true son. While there weren't social media platforms on which to air grievances, how did such a unique family cope with those inevitable tensions that can arise in the lives of even the holiest families? Such a question seems to be answered by St. Paul in our second reading today, in which he writes to the Colossians about the virtues essential to family life. Put on heartfelt compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. And in the very most important line of all, St. Paul urges them to bear with one another, forgiving each other as God has forgiven them. Yes, he will go on to say that over all these virtues, they should put on love. But we should appreciate the truth that love does not exist on its own. It is only generated by those who do patiently tolerate and forgive one another, exercising that gentleness and humility that implies no retaliation permitted, thus no escalation of anger allowed. Thus, this is how the members of a blended family living in Nazareth under much hardship and stress were able to maintain themselves not as a perfect family. There is absolutely no such thing, but as a truly holy family, because when all was said and done, they freely forgave and sincerely loved one another. Unfortunately, St. Paul isn't reading Reddit and posting advice on it, because this is what each of those who aired their grievances on that platform needed to hear. But instead, they were encouraged by other commentators to get back at or even with those who hurt them. Yet isn't that the quickest way to perpetuate bitterness for quite a long time to come and resolve absolutely nothing in the process? Today, families under stress and duress need a new message, but ironically, it is rather an old message about how to conduct themselves in a family setting, as written by St. Paul in the first century. But how will they hear that message today? If we were to try to proclaim it to them by reading this passage from the New Testament, they'd probably dismiss this as a pious lecture by people whom they write off as trying to be holier than thou. But if they were to see it at work, see it in action, indeed actually witness patience and forgiveness being lovingly lived in immediate and extended families, then they just might accept it as a much more attractive option to the endless cycle of hurt and verbal violence that describes life in too many families today. So with the Holy Family as our model, let us rededicate ourselves to this kind of family life and living, and trust that for those who seek a way out of the cycle of misery, seeing might just be believing.